What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the End of the Bench Show, where the fans go. Pat, what's going on, dude? How are you?
Not much, man. I mean, everything's been pretty smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It's been kind of dull in the world of baseball in terms of big moves. Nothing's really occurred yet, but that's
Yep.
why we enjoy this time of year. Almost, we get to make these speculations, these predictions are always fun to make.
Yep.
So yeah, looking forward to seeing who makes the first big splash.
Yeah. So, if you guys couldn't tell by the episode title, we're gonna talk about baseball free agency, which obviously, Pat, like between me and you, our episodes, and then our episode with the Born in '87 pod, and then my episode with Cassidy on the Yankees, like we have hit free agency pretty hard in baseball already. But what we've
Mm-hmm.
usually focused on, and rightfully so, is like the bigger moves. Like the Yankees, me and Cass spent a lot of time on, Francisco Lindor coming. Um, Obviously, the Mets are in play for a lot of the big name guys, so we've talked a lot about, Trevor Bauer, the George Springers, the whoever, JT Realmuto, and
Yep.
so on in that ilk. And what this episode's really going to be is, first of all, it's your idea, so I do want to give you credit, but it's
Thank
going
you.
to be like and not even like the next tier of guys, maybe like two or three tiers below the top, like the under the radar guys that like may not move the meter in terms of like headlines when you see it, but are going to be good guys to have on your team. And those are the moves that we kind of want to focus on this episode. And then hopefully moves will start actually fucking happening and we can talk about them.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
We'll
Like I said,
speak it
I
into
want to know who's going to
existence,
make
Pat.
hopefully. I mean, I don't even care if it's whether the Mets or the Yankees. I just want to see one big chip
Yeah.
fall. I mean, we prefer it just be one of our teams, but we've seen how the market can be over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys not signing right away, waiting to see who's the one who's going to set the market and so on. So it's going to
Yeah.
be interesting to see the first chip to fall.
Yeah. And I think before we get into it, there are two things that really happen in baseball. One relates directly to this episode. And the other is something that I saw briefly, I think last night, maybe this morning. I went to sleep pretty early last night, so I don't know when it actually happened. Um, the Dodgers have expressed interest in trading for Arenado, and I want to get your thoughts on how ridiculous that team would be.
I mean, the Dodgers get Nolan Arenado. I think that
So
they immediately become front runners for the World Series again. That would
they
be
already
honestly
are,
insane.
which is
I mean, yeah. I mean, without a doubt. But it would be absolutely insane. You're going to be replacing Justin Turner with Nolan Arenado, who's probably the best third baseman in the league. I know a lot of
yeah,
people give him the Coors effect on how his numbers are biased towards playing
mm-hmm.
in Coors Field. In certain aspects, I'm sure that can be true, but overall, the Coors effect is I'm not going to say it's non-existent, but I think it's overhyped sometimes. A good
Yeah,
hitter is a good hitter, regardless of where you go. I mean, kind of DJ LeMahieu kind of proved that with what he did in the Yankees. Granted, the Yankee Stadium is smaller, but you don't have
yeah,
the the climate and everything like you would have in Coors. But I think regardless, a guy like Nolan Arenado, wherever he goes, he's going to put up very good numbers, and
mm-hmm.
especially if you plot him in the middle of that lineup with Mookie, Bellinger, Muncy, Will
Yeah.
Smith. I mean, that would be absolutely insane. But the big question is who they have to give up. I don't know their farm system as well as I would
Yeah.
others. But one of their bigger prospects that I know of that they could cost them is a guy like maybe Gavin Lux, who's their big second base prospect. They're really
Mm-hmm.
high on him. I don't know if that would be an asking point for the Rockies because they're going to want to get something big in return. I mean, the Dodgers are going to take on that contract, obviously, but they're going to want at least one pretty good name prospect, and I think a guy like Lux would be the asking point.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know exactly how else their farm system lines up in terms of their other big name prospects.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what they would ask for or what the Dodgers would
Yeah.
give.
I agree. I mean, I think honestly, like the Rockies trading him in division would be extremely tough for their fan base to accept. I think you're right. Like
Yeah.
Gavin Lux is probably has to be in the deal if you're the Rockies, and also if you're the Rockies, like you probably want pitching, right? Like you probably want some.
Dustin May.
Yeah, you probably want
I
a
mean,
guy
I
like
think he'd
Dustin
probably be the guy that they'd want to ask. Yeah.
because I don't
I'm
think you
looking at
want.
their.
Well, I don't think you want pitching prospects. If you're the, I think like the Rockies would want guys pitching prospects plus pitchers who are ready right now, and Dustin May is a guy who's ready right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
So I'm looking
I
at the
don't know if that happens.
Dodgers. I mean, I'm looking at the Dodgers' top 10 prospects right now, and I think 4 of their top 10 are all pitchers, 2 of which could be anticipated to hit the majors as of next year. Their
Yeah.
number 1 prospect, Josiah Gray,
Mm-hmm.
and their number 9 prospect, Mitch White. Both of them are right-handed pitchers. They both have right now, according to MLB.com, an ETA of 2020. So maybe those are 2 guys that, if they wanted to put on the table for the for Arenado, that could be it. They do have a couple other prospects, a couple infield prospects, a few catching prospects as well. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
Arizona.
Colorado.
Colorado's looking for some infield depth or anything like that. But I don't know. I mean, right now it's all speculation. We
Mm-hmm.
hear the speculation with the Mets trading for Lindor, how the Mets should get involved in talks for Arenado. Nothing's official until we hear it from a guy like
Yeah.
Rosenthal or Bustroni or Jeff Passan, guys like that. But it makes for fun conversation. That's why I love this time of the year.
Yeah. I think like the last point that we'll really move on, like the Dodgers being involved should scare every team that thought they had a chance because like if you can offer Gavin Lux as a middle infielder, because the Rockies will probably lose Trevor Story next year, and if you have 2 top pitching prospects in your organization, like I mean, teams should always be scared when the Dodgers get involved, and I think this especially because I don't even know like what would you do? Like, could you even say like we'll include Corey Seager too and
No,
save a
I don't think they could
prospect?
do that.
Why? I mean,
Nah, I
Seager
don't think. I
could reach
mean,
it next
that
year.
might be something they would ask for, but I don't know if they would necessarily do that.
Yeah,
But now that I think about it, like you said, they're losing Trevor Story. I forgot he's a free agent after 2020.
yeah,
You almost think, like, I'm going back to my Mets, obviously, that maybe they line up a little bit better for a trade, because then Mets have 2 shortstop prospects that they could ultimately try and trade one of them. And well, not prospects. You have Ahmed
yeah,
Rosario and Andres Jimenez. So if they're looking for a long-term shortstop answer, if they're not able to re-sign Story, which if they're trying to trade Arenado, that's probably going to be the reason. Unless they're
yeah,
trying to trade Arenado so they can re-sign Story, who would probably be a lot less money. But
yeah,
ultimately, you kind of have to find a team that lines up best. I mean, the Mets have a couple of prospects that the Rockies might want. The Dodgers would then have to, if they were to trade for Arenado, they'd have to worry about paying a guy like Bellinger long term, which they haven't done. They don't, have the
yeah,
necessary needs for it yet. If they are comfortable with having Muncy long term, Seager, all these guys. I mean, it's a lot that has to be discussed on both ends.
yep,
But yeah, I mean, you just don't know what's going through the minds of some of these GMs. I mean, Andrew Friedman, GM for the Dodgers, he clearly knows what he's doing. I think
yeah,
Dodger fans have complete faith in him for making the right decision and getting rid of who they need to, if it means getting the best third baseman in baseball.
yeah. And I think like the Rockies, if you don't get pitching back, then like what are you doing? Because you haven't had pitching in like fucking 27 years. So
Yeah,
like,
they have to. I mean, they haven't had. I feel like they've had some good pitchers, but they've always been on like 1 year like
yeah,
things. I mean, they had Jeff Francis, who was hot for a year. Ubaldo Jimenez, who was insane for the first half of, I forget the exact year. Um,
yeah,
they had anticipated a guy like John Gray to be their big ace that never really panned out. Kyle Freeland had a great year, I think 2 years ago, but kind of fell off the map. So they don't really have a set in stone ace. So that they kind of need to get some kind of prospect or some sort of pitching help back to hopefully help them reach the next plateau. I mean, it's going to be tough when you're in the same division as the Dodgers, but still.
yeah. All right, so let's get to the second part of the baseball news, which is going to transition us very nicely to this topic. Robinson Cano was just, I don't know, Pat. I know you're happy. Met fans are happy that Robinson Cano tested positive for PEDs and is going to miss the whole season, forfeited his salary of, what's it, 27 million or 24 million?
20. It was 24 million. 20.25, I think, was coming from the Mets itself. The Mariners were paying the other 4 because that's the way the trade worked out. So now, not only did the Mets get $20 million to work with for this upcoming year, the Mariners actually get another $4 million to work with because that money is not going to Cano anyways. It goes back to the team. I'm not going to say I was necessarily happy. I mean, I was happy, but in past years, if this happened to the Mets, you were like, of course, that's so Mets. This year, it's like, it kind of works out in the Mets' favor in so many different ways. Now they get to save an additional $20 million that can be used towards payroll. Had it been any other year and the Wilpons were still in control, that $20 million would have gone right back into their pockets. Steve Cohen has made it pretty adamant that he's going to be spending that $20 million. And it works in favor because of now they have that payroll flexibility with that additional money, and it works out where Jeff McNeil can go to his natural position at second base if they decide to go that route. I think that's going to help him long term because he has had a couple injury problems in the past because they keep moving him around outfield, third base, second base. A guy like him, the pure hitter that he is, I know a lot of people kind of compared him to like a Ben Zobrist type, the ability to play multiple positions, still hit. I think he would just be better if you give him one set position. He doesn't have to worry about having to be moving around every other day. Give him second base if that's the route they want to go. I would like them to go that route. Give him second base and let him run with it. I think that ultimately be the best thing for the team and for McNeil as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, it brings up I agree with everything you said. It brings up the possibility of, and this is where we're going to start. Brings up the possibility of maybe DJ LeMahieu to the Mets, and the Yankees and the Mets have a war over a player for the first time in, I don't know, ever, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to say ever, but it's a legitimate possibility for the Mets now. And obviously you wrote down on your little script here that it's the Yankees' primary off-season goal to re-sign DJ. And that second base is a need for both teams. So I want you to kind of just dissect your thoughts, and then I'll give you mine.
I mean, second base is a need more for the Yankees than it is for the Mets because now, like I said, the Mets will be able to slot McNeil in there as the everyday second baseman, something that they should have been doing anyways. It is the absolute primary need for the Yankees. I know there are a lot of Yankee fans, I think yourself included, you're like, DJ's probably not going to be here. You don't see the Yankees spending that money or whatever it may be. But I think he has to be the Yankees' top priority because after him, I mean, there are a couple of decent second basemen on the free agent market. I wrote that down in our little outline. We can go into it a little bit more, but they don't match up to what DJ can do. And it doesn't seem like you have any good infield, I don't want to say good infield prospects. I'll say prospects that can be slotted in and play second base right now. I think DJ re-signing with the Yankees is a must. It seems like he wants to be in the Yankees, so I don't see why Cashman can't get a deal done. But in terms of second base for the Mets, I think that job is McNeil's. They don't necessarily need DJ. They have other needs they have to fulfill. You don't want to just sign DJ to say, hey, we got him away from the Yankees. I don't want to do that. I want to do something that's going to help my team in other areas that we know we absolutely need it. And second base is not a need right now for the Mets.
So I have okay. So second base is a need. DJ LeMahieu is a need. You're absolutely right. I am prepared. Cassidy is prepared for DJ LeMahieu to not be a Yankee. And even Chris Burkowski, who's on numerous times from Charging Mound, did a whole episode on free agency, and he's prepared for him not to be a Yankee. I think if you're a Yankee fan and you think DJ is a lock to come back, I think you're delusional and you should, stop smoking. I will say that I don't think that makes the Yankees free agency need second base. So I think what they're gonna do, I think, if DJ doesn't come back, is they're gonna try to find a way to move Glaber to second. So I mean, like second base is a need, but I think that's how we solve it, and then we focus on shortstop free agency, like an Andrelton Simmons, who is my guess
Mhm.
that the Yankees are gonna get because Cashman has loved him legitimately forever. So I think that's I think that's how they would address DJ if he leaves, or you trade for Lindor, which I would. I mean, I don't. It gets messy if we trade for Lindor, just like future of the Yankees wise. But I think it'd be a great move. But depending on who you give up,
Yeah.
but I don't see the Yankees signing a second baseman. Like of they have to sign an infielder because they need depth in the infield, especially middle infield, regardless. Which is why DJ is so important. He played second, he played third, he played first. He didn't play shortstop. That's probably the only the only flaw
I
in
mean,
DJ's game. But like like you wrote down Colton Wong. Colton Wong to me, like he's not coming. Like he's not an option for the like. I would not be happy if I get Colton Wong because as far as I know, I can only put him at second base, and that just doesn't fit what the Yankees have tried to do, like system wide. Like they try to get versatile guys. Like I don't think Colton Wong is that guy. Cesar
that's fair.
Hernandez, you wrote down. Tommy LaStella, you wrote down. I think they're first of all, Tommy LaStella has a -2 defensive WAR. I don't know if that's a legitimate stat.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what I was kind of going towards. Like, I didn't think that most Yankee fans felt that Glaber wasn't going to be the shortstop going forward.
Oh no,
I
I
looked at
think
his
that's
numbers.
so.
His defensive numbers are not where they need to be for a second baseman. It's actually pretty
Yeah,
not terrible, but definitely not what you expected to see. So, I mean, my outline that you and I discussed that you got, that's more that for if you decided to keep Glaber at second, you wanted to sign a second baseman. These are some of the top options I think
yeah,
would be a good fit. None of them are DJ LeMahieu, obviously, Cesar Hernandez, Colton
no,
Wong, Tom Listella. But I think out of all of those, the best guy, if you decided you wanted to look towards
Hernandez.
second base, is going to be Cesar Hernandez. You look at his numbers last year. I mean, granted, 58 games, but still, 283, 355, 408 slash line. 108 weighted runs created plus. And the big thing is he was tied first in terms of all second basemen on the defensive side, 6 defensive runs saved,
Yeah,
ultimate zone rating 3.8. He was arguably, I'm not going to say arguably, but one of the better second basemen defensively in the league last year. So, I mean, if you're trying to shore up some defense and fill a second base need, I think he would be a great fit.
yeah,
That's if you decide to keep Glaber at short. If you decide to move Glaber to second, yeah, a guy like Anderson Simmons would be a great fit for the Yankees, whether it be on a 1 or 2 year deal, whatever they're thinking about. You also
yeah,
mentioned the trade for Francisco Lindor would be great for both Mets and Yankees, obviously, but now it comes to a matter of what you were willing to give up. I think on the Yankees side, you'd have to be willing to part with potentially a Davy Garcia or maybe a Clark Schmidt, both of
yep.
which you guys are very high on.
You
I
could trade
expect both of
Clark
them to
Schmidt,
be
and
in.
I wouldn't care.
That's fair, but I expect both of them to be in the at least see the rotation going into 2021 if they're not going to start there at the start of the year. I see them both in the rotation at some point. I mean, yeah, you could also trade an Andujar or a Frazier, but then you'd have another need in left field currently. I mean, Andujar, he doesn't really have a spot right now. Gio's been so good at third for you guys. You have Luke Voigt at first, so that's not even really an option. And in terms of DH, it's Stanton. So he would probably be
Yeah,
the best trade piece, but it's a matter of who else you have to pack with him to get a guy like Lindor. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see how Cashman and company are going to go with this off season. I still personally think that you go after your MVP candidate, the guy who was the best player on your team last year, and see if you can get him at a little bit of a discount, because it seems like he wants to stay with the Yankees. So you might be able to get him not cheap, but for a couple mil less than what other team might be willing to pay.
yeah. I think it's just tough because the way Yankee fans are just being told that that $1 million, $2 million difference could be everything to the Yankees, which on like another note, like I find it like I know the Yankees is all the Steinbrenners have, but I find it extremely hard to believe that we can afford $2 million more to a player, especially of DJ LeMahieu's caliber. But like that's a conversation for a different day. Um, but yeah, I think like if we don't get DJ, I think the primary goal is finding a way to move Gleyber Torres to second base. I think if we get DJ, you know, the Yankees themselves and fans are gonna be more willing to stomach Gleyber at short defensively because who knows, like Gleyber could get better. Like we're kind of like writing Gleyber off as like a terrible shortstop right now, like defensively, but like he is still like what 23, 24 years old. Like he could
Yeah,
still
he's
get
still.
he still has time. Um, I mean, but do the Yankees want to take time on something like defensively? We're a win now team. Like, and defense is a primary reason why we were not as great as we could have been last year. So I don't know. I mean, like of this list, like if we get Cesar Hernandez, like I'd be happy. Obviously it's not DJ. I think to bring us into the next part of the starting pitching, which I think applies more to like each team. I think there's a legitimate debate in Yankee land of whether we give DJ LeMahieu money or we give Masahiro Tanaka money. And I really like it's a tough call. I understand why it's a tough call. To me, like Tanaka's my guy, but like I don't know. I've never had to be in this position, pal. Like, I've never had to worry about like we have to choose between two guys. Like this is
Yeah,
not to be rude, but like this is a Mets fucking problem. Like this is not a Yankee problem. An old Mets
you're not
problem.
being rude. It's the truth. I mean,
It's
this
in
is
yeah.
something that has always been like a Mets issue.
Like this is
But
not
yeah,
something I should have to worry about as a Yankee fan, and I think that's how a lot of Yankee fans feel, and that's why we're all like a little like delusional and like trying to just say like, nah, fuck it, they're just playing with us, like we're gonna get everyone still, and I don't like I'm bracing for it not to be true. I just for that not to happen. I don't know how to feel it. I don't know how to talk about it because like I've never had practice talking about it. Like I
yeah,
don't.
you've always pretty
Yeah.
much had the assumption that you're gonna get who you want and then leave it at
Yeah.
that. Um, but yeah, in terms of the needs that both the Mets and Yankees share, I think clearly the Mets have way more needs that they have to fulfill.
Yeah.
But they do have some similarities in terms of what they need with the Yankees. Both teams need pitching, both on
Yeah.
the rotation end and the bullpen end. And outside of guys like Bauer and Charlie Morton, which are clearly A and B on the top of a lot of teams' lists, I'm sure, or at
Yeah.
least those who could afford them. It's kind of like a drop off. I mean, you have some good guys that are good depth pieces
Hmm.
that both teams could absolutely use. I mean, the Mets have to replace Noah Syndergaard for half a year.
Yeah.
I mean, right now they only have a rotation of DeGrom, Stroman, and Peterson.
Hmm.
I don't want Steven Matz in the rotation. I'll be very adamant about that right now.
Yeah.
I want to like the guy. I've been wanting to like the guy as a Long Island kid. I know that's so cliche to say, but he's
Hmm.
just not been good in like the last 2 years or so. I think he could be very good out of the pen for them, but they need to fulfill that starting pitching role.
Yeah.
And on the Yankee side, it's you got Garrett Cole. You'll hopefully get Severino back midseason. I
Hmm.
believe he had Tommy John surgery too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then you have young arms in Montgomery, Garcia, and Clark Schmidt. So both teams need depth. And I think they need to sign both teams at least two starting pitchers. And I've given you a list of a couple of guys that I think
Yeah.
are good that some guys might overlook in a sense.
Hmm. Well,
First guy is Mike Minor. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
before we get into that, like, I want to touch on some things that you said.
Mm,
The Yankees also have Domingo Herman coming back. I mean, supposedly coming back from his domestic violence charge, mishap, suspension, bad guy stuff. But the assumption is that he will be back with the Yankees. I think the Steinbrenners are like debating whether or not that they want him to be a part of it, but like, I mean, you have Aroldis Chapman, so like, there's really no reason to believe that Herman won't be back in the rotation for the Yankees. And I think that will help them because that like limits the number to like if you have Herman come back and you have Tanaka, then you only really need like, maybe one free agent signing at the rotation or one more because like you do have Davey still unless we get rid of him in a Lindor trade. So yeah, I did want to say that. And I think like, Trevor Bauer, Charlie Morton, yes, they're the top free agents at the starting pitching position, but like there's still a drop off between them. Like it's not Trevor Bauer, Charlie Morton, and then a huge drop off. Like in my mind, it's Trevor Bauer, drop off, Charlie Morton, just in terms of the money you're going to have to spend.
Yeah.
Too, because like Trevor Bauer's worth, whatever he's worth. Charlie Morton is like projected to be like an $8 million, $10 million pitcher. That's drastically different than Trevor Bauer. I mean, some of these pitchers that we're about to talk about may be close to Charlie Morton's salary. Like I don't even know. So I think it's like two levels of the drop off between Trevor Bauer is 1 and Charlie Morton is 2, but like in a different offseason, Charlie Morton may be like the 5th best pitcher available, especially with his age or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that it comes down to, outside of the money, obviously, is the age gap. I mean, Morton's going to be entering, I think he's like age 38 season. Granted, he only hit his prime, it seems, like 3 years ago. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball since then, but you still have to take into account he is 38 years old. I still would give him a 1-2-year deal. Like you said, I think like 8 to 10 million. I think that's pretty good for a guy like him. And almost in a sense, like if he was any younger, he'd be getting a lot more in terms of what his market value is, but it's because he's at age 38. You want to go more than like 10 million or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there are some other starting pitching options that are available that are a big drop off between Morton and where they sit. One of the guys at the top of my list that I looked at is a guy like Mike Minor, who had a great season with Texas a few years ago. He split time last year with Texas and Oakland. He's only 33 years old. Spot Track, which is a great website. I don't know if a lot of our listeners, when they look at stats or anything they use, this is great for looking at their contracts, market values, everything like that. His market value is about $10.5 million per year. So depending on how many years you want to go with him or whatever it may be, I think he would be a good fit for either team. Lefty, good at the back end of the rotation. He seems like he's serviceable. I'd have to get his numbers up specifically, but his numbers were very good.
I thought he was trash this year when he went to Oakland.
He wasn't good after the trade. I'm gonna get his numbers.
Well, that's concerning to me.
You look at what he's.
That's concerning because Oakland is a pitcher-friendly ballpark. So, like, I don't like hearing that he wasn't good after the trade.
Well, I'm going to try and get his numbers specifically with Oakland and how many starts he had. But when you look at the list of free agent pitchers, he is, after the main guys, he is the guy that you want to look at.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, like, I don't – like you said $10.5 million was his market value, and I want to know how Spot Track is getting that market value. Like, what – because I don't think he's worth $10.5 million.
He pitched 5 games for Oakland after the trade. He had a 5.48 ERA, 21 1/3 innings. 27 strikeouts, a 4.22 FIP, a WHIP of 1.031, ERA plus of 76. So it's definitely a down 2020 as a whole. But in 2019, he had great numbers, and that was the last full season. So maybe you have to take that into account too. Like, he only had 12 starts compared to the 32 he had the previous year. Maybe a guy like him just needs to be stretched out a little bit more over the course of the season to get what you see. 2019, 3.59 ERA in 32 starts, 200 innings, which is great. He's always had like a high innings pitch guy. The lowest that he's had in terms of being a full-time starter was probably in 2014 when he was with Atlanta at 145 innings. But in 2019, 208 1/3 innings, 200 strikeouts, a 144 ERA plus, a 4.25 FIP, 1.238 whip. I think if he can continue putting up numbers fairly similar to that, especially the innings pitched, I mean, that would be a great fit for either the Mets or the Yankees. So I think he would be the top of the list of second or third tier starting pitchers that you kind of need.
I mean, we agree there. I mean, like, I'm looking at his advanced stats too. Like, he has a 3.98 career ERA, and that's including, obviously the 5.5 that he rolled out last year. Like, I don't know. It seems like that's an outlier season, but it also seems like his 2017 when he put up a 2.55 ERA is an out. Oh, but that was only 77 innings pitched. So that season doesn't count regardless. But it counts in the, I don't know. Like, he throws a lot of strikes, 64% strike percentage. So, like, that kind of worries me, especially if you're talking about, like, him being a Yankee, like, it's a pretty short.
He may play. He may
throw 64% strikes.
A guy like him probably does pitch better in a pitcher friendly park. I was trying to look at his ground ball rate, and he's below average. So it looks like he gives up a lot of fly balls. He's not a ground ball pitcher, as it seems. So that is a little iffy in terms of being in a small park like Yankee Stadium, but it works better in a park like Citi Field that's bigger. So he might be a little bit better fit for the Mets than the Yankees, but I think it's still
but the Yankees have been
linked, that maybe the Yankees can.
The Yankees have been linked to him before, so like I definitely think that it's someone that they go after. Like, what's funny is, and we'll talk about Alex Wood and Taijuan Walker too, and like those are also names that the Yankees were linked to before, and I, knowing Cashman the way I do, like, he has his guys and he will eventually get his guys one way or the other. Typically, that may change now because of COVID, but like I do think Mike Minor is someone who he'll probably get an offer for the. Let me ask you this, Pat, before we get to the other guys. As a non-Yankee fan, say the Yankees don't get DJ and they don't get Tanaka, but they make all like these little moves of like the under the radar guys, like some of these pitchers that we're going to talk about. And, they get a guy like, I don't know, if they find a way to either move Glaber to second and get like Andrelton Simmons, or maybe they keep Glaber and they, get Cesar Hernandez or something. Like, if they make a lot of these little moves, do you think that's like a successful offseason for the Yankees? But they don't.
It's successful in terms of they're filling the needs that they had to fulfill. I mean, we've seen how some smaller deals for lower level guys rather than the one big name can be a little bit more beneficial. I mean, what was it that really hurt the Yankees outside of basically not scoring any runs in the playoff round last year? Like, was it the pitching or was it the?
No, it's defense, number one. Their bullpen depth, because they refused to use Adam Ottavino, is a concern, and they lost Tommy Kahnle. He's not going to come back. And and the hitting in the playoffs. Like, everyone always says it's the pitching, but it's like really not. Like, at the end of the day, we lost the game to Tampa. What, like, it was 2-1 or 3-2? Like, they didn't fucking hit. Like, never hit.
No, but the Yankees were a team. The Yankees were a team for the last couple of years. Like, they relied heavily on the long ball, right? When you guys got Stanton, Judge, Voit, DJ put up some big home run numbers, and I think what'll be good for them if they're able to get a kind of guy who can hit for average, not necessarily. His slugging doesn't have to be huge. Yeah, slugging doesn't have to be huge. A guy who can give you, like 10 home runs a year or something like that. But if he can give you a high on base, I think that would be a little bit more key. So that's where I think a guy like maybe Andrelton Simmons or Cesar Hernandez would be better, because they're not home run hitters. They're guys who can just hit when given the opportunity. So in a sense, maybe that could help them. But I mean, you don't want to add to one place by subtracting from another. I still think ultimately the way you'd have to go is DJ. And then shoring up your staff, both on the starting end and the bullpen. If they're able to do that, then I think they'll be in a much better position when it comes to next year. But I mean, if you're not hitting in the playoffs, like regardless of who you sign, you have to hit when your name's called, and that goes for any team. And we've seen how so many teams relied so heavily on analytics. You want to sign those right guys, but ultimately you also, when it comes to, push comes to shove, you also have to rely on your gut and be able to, put in who you think is going to be giving you your best chance to win the game.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep moving down the list of pitchers. I just wanted to ask that because I think like Yankee fans have to get ready for a lot of moves for a lot of guys that we're talking about, especially in the starting pitching and bullpen section. So you have Jake Odorizzi next, and like that name does literally nothing for me. Literally nothing.
Nothing for you?
No.
Yankee terms?
No, any term.
I mean,
I don't think any team should want Jake Odorizzi. That's a harsh take.
I disagree.
But
that's a harsh take. I disagree. I think he's already been linked to several different teams. I think it was the Twins, Giants, Mets, Blue Jays.
Yeah.
So he definitely has a market for him. I mean, granted, that market is primarily coming from his 2019 season. He did have some injury problems last year. He only had 4 starts. But 2019, he had great numbers. He's not. You look at his career numbers, and they're not terrible. I mean, several seasons he's had some ERAs under 4. A couple of them ERAs over 4. But he throws innings. 168, 169, 187, 143. Like he throws. Gives you 150 plus innings a year, which is nice. Career ERA plus of 105, FIP of 412, WHIP of 1.240. I think he would be, assuming that he's 100% healthy in 2021. He's only going to be entering his age 31 season. I think you could take a flyer on a guy like Jake Odorizzi, and seeing how the Mets need some back end rotation help. I think he'd be a good fit there. If you don't see him as a fit for the Yankees, then I completely understand that.
What's his market value on SpotTrack? Do you have it?
SpotTrack has his market value. Give me one sec.
If it's higher than Mike Minor, we're never using SpotTrack on this podcast.
It is. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's much higher than him.
What are we doing?
I mean, he has him right now at 14.
14 million?
Value. Yeah, that's his market value right here.
All right, all right. So we have to. Okay. This is what I was afraid of.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, well, it probably doesn't make you feel any better. But Masahiro Tanaka, who you would like the Yankees to re-sign, SpotTrack has his market value at 16. So I mean, if you want to completely not listen to what SpotTrack does in terms of their market values, I get that. But if you can get pissed. I don't know how their calculations are, but I mean, if you're pissed about Minor at 14 and you're not willing to sign him, but you want to go to Tanaka, Tanaka could cost you more. Granted, I think Tanaka is a year younger too. But
Jake Odorizzi market value 14, called 14.1. Charlie Morton market value 14.6. Like that, that just loses me. I don't know. It loses me. I don't.
Well, I don't know if any team's going to want to take Charlie Morton for 14.6.
Am I just that?
I think they're around there.
I don't think anyone's going to take Jake Odorizzi for 14.
I don't think you're wrong, but it could be in terms of. You also have to look at the market as how many big name pitchers are available that year, and then like the second tier. Like right now, it's Bauer. He's like the only number one. I mean, yeah, Morton, but again, like we talked about, Morton's age kind of deducts what his market value would be in any other year. So if he can use that, guys like Minor, Odorizzi, Tanaka, for teams that have starting pitching help, that need starting pitching, that could work in their favor, because it's basically we're not going to be able to afford Bauer at 22, 23 million a year, but we can afford a guy at like 15, 16 a year, so if you go that route, you look at guys like Tanaka, Minor, Odorizzi. So I guess that's why, in terms of their market value being so high.
Yeah, I don't know. I understand that. I just don't like if my team signed Jake Odorizzi for $14 million, I'd be pretty upset. That's all. Like that's where I land.
If your team has additional needs that need to be fulfilled before starting pitching, absolutely. If your number one need is getting some starting pitching depth, then you could see it's understandable to pay that much. The Mets have other needs. I wouldn't offer Odorizzi a $14 million contract on 1 year because they have additional needs and money needs to be put elsewhere. But he is a guy I look at for back end of rotation depth and see if you can get him a little bit cheaper on a 1 year, maybe like a $10 million deal or something like that. He is, like I said, coming off of a slight injury. So he wants a lot of guys like them, you might see on a 1 year prove it deal. And then test the market again, try and get another 2 or 3 year deal after that. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how some front offices attack these starting pitchers in terms of free agency.
Yeah. I don't know. I
think we're going to see a lot of 1-2 year deals. I think we're going to see a lot of 1 year, 2 year deals.
Yeah.
I think I'll just leave it at that.
I just feel like you could like piece together like 2 guys for the price of Jake Odorizzi, and I think that's like a better.
Tell me the 2 guys that you think you can piece together for that price and still give you that production though. There's really I can't see anybody you can price together for.
I don't know the production Odorizzi is going to give me off the injury. What was the injury? Was it like elbow or was it like not arm related?
I thought it was back, but I could be wrong.
Well, that's concerning.
I'm gonna look it up. Give me 1 second. I apologize. I should have had all this up. September he was placed. He had a blister on his right middle finger, so that was his pitching finger.
I love how
I thought he had another injury. I could be. He got hit. Oh, this could be something too. He did get hit with a line drive at a game in August. So that probably was something there. Mm-hmm. I think it seems like most of his injuries or time that he's missed may have been more cosmetic than anything else.
I don't know. I'm looking at the guys.
If that's the case, then you look at that list and there's no 2 guys that you could get together for $15 total, or $15 million total. That'll put up. Yeah, that'd be nice. $15. I mean,
I get.
I can't even tell you.
I understand.
You could maybe get.
Go ahead.
You can maybe get a guy like Taijuan Walker, which I think would be a good fit for the Yankees. But again, he's also coming off an injury. He's had injury troubles in the past, but he's still like 29 years old. So you could take a flyer on him, maybe get him for like $7-8 million a year or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's really.
I don't know. I'm looking at it from like just a general base, not even like the Yankees or Mets. Like I'm just thinking like five starting pitchers are never enough. You always need like 6 to 8.
Pitching
so I'm thinking like, does this $14 million that you pay Jake Odorizzi, does that lead you to not being able to sign like those number 6 and number 7 guys? Because if it does, then yeah, I don't think he's worth it. If you could sign him and you still are able to fill out the rest of your starting pitching depth, then fine. But if 14 million, because of COVID and, not having fans and et cetera, like 15 million for a guy of Jake Odorizzi, like that just may not be worth it. And like, yeah, I think you could say like production wise, it may not equate, but you have to build out the rest of the roster. Like if you give Odorizzi 15 million, like that just may not happen. Like it just may.
I think one big thing with the Yankees is that they have 3 young arms that at least I'm not even talking about the Yankees. I'm just talking like in general. In general? Well, again, if the team has a need that they know they can't get a Bauer or Morton, but they need some sort of starting pitching, whether it be middle of rotation, end of the rotation, just one guy that needs to just bring that final piece together, they might want to spend that money on a guy like Odorizzi or a Minor.
Yeah, I get it.
Because I think that could just be the final piece they need.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just going to fundamentally disagree, and that's fine. I don't think anything you're saying is wrong. I don't think anything I'm saying is wrong, but like,
I could be 100% wrong. My opinions are my opinions. So
I know, but I don't think I get what you're saying. Like, if he's the missing piece, I don't think an under the radar starting pitcher like Jake Odorizzi is going to be a missing piece to any team. Like, is to put them over the hump. I think that's where I went. Like, I would rather.
He helped the Twins. He helped the Twins in 2019.
And what did they do? Did they lose in the first round of the playoffs?
They lost. They lost in the first round. Yeah, that's.
Did he? And I don't even think he pitched in the playoffs. I could be wrong, but I don't think he pitched.
I'm not sure. In 2019,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm of the ilk that if you're relying on, if all you have in a COVID year, which may be true for like these teams, if they only have like, 15, $25 million available, I don't think you should just spend most of it on one guy unless it's like Trevor Bauer or Real Muto or one of the top guys. And I don't know.
It's such a weird circumstance that for anybody entering free agency after a year like this, where it's like, yeah, he did good in a 60-game sample, which is great. But then you look at his career numbers before that, they could be like mediocre, or like this 2020 could be outliers simply because of the 60 games. Like, it's weird how some teams they're gonna attack the market with that in mind. Like.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think you have a year like this. You have to take into 2019 into account as well, and kind of like compile the 2 years together and get an average of what you would anticipate them to be going forward. I don't know. It's just also weird. It's hard to really.
It's also tough to like rely on market value from SpotTrack because they have no idea. Like, no one has any ideas, but. We just spent like 20 minutes arguing about it, so we can't. That's a tough spot to land.
Well, why don't we move on?
But yeah, we gotta move on because Jake Odorizzi doesn't deserve that much of my time, to be honest. I don't know.
I mean, in short, we don't have to really talk too much about the rest of starting pitching, but I gave you a couple of guys like Alex Wood, Talon Walker, young guys who can definitely help in a back end of rotation, or even if you want to slot them in as a bullpen piece. Both guys have pitched out of the bullpen.
Alex Wood worries.
He has had some issues. I think he's had some shoulder issues, but he came back fairly strong for the Dodgers.
That's why he worries me. Like, I look at the Dodgers as so like ahead of everything else compared to everyone in baseball that when people have success there, like it's almost like we talked about Colorado before and the hitters. It worries me when players have a lot of success for the Dodgers that they necessarily didn't really have on the other teams that they played for, because I just think the Dodgers are that much better than everyone else when it comes to like analytics and development and things like that, where it worries me. It's kind of like how pitchers go to Houston and just automatically get better. Like, it's kind of like that. Like, I have a very hard time trusting it for other places. So that's why Alex Wood scares me. I think he's a fine pitcher. I think like he's not a guy people over.
So are you saying that because of how good he was in LA, like people will overpay for that and then get production that's nowhere near what he's getting paid for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
because he's coming from LA.
Yeah, like that's just like it's a weird take for me to have probably, but like it just worries me. Like, same reason why we worry about hitters coming over from Colorado because of like the ballpark. Like, that's the Coors Field is like the equivalent to the Dodgers development system, and like it worries me if I see a guy like have breakout years on the Dodgers, which I don't even have Alex Wood's numbers in front of me. I don't know if what he did is classifies as breakout year, but like it just worries me that like other teams won't be able to get that out of him the way the Dodgers can, because they seem to get the best out of every single player that touches that roster and organization.
That's fair. I mean, 2017 was Wood's breakout year. He was the All-Star that year. 2.72 ERA in 25 starts, 152 in the third innings, 151 strikeouts, FIP of 3.32, WHIP of 1.057. And I think his K per 9 is 8.9. So that was his breakout year.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good pitcher. I know he's a good pitcher. Definitely belongs on the list. I don't know. It may honestly only worry me and no one else in the world. So, who knows?
And then the last guy that I had put on our list was a guy
Mm-hmm.
like Talon Walker. I think the biggest thing with him is he's still young,
Yeah.
and in terms of he's had injury problems, but he doesn't have a lot of work on his arm. So as long as he's used the proper way, you could get that the risk reward on him it can be very nice. So
Yeah, and he was the guy. He was traded from the Mariners to the Jays at the deadline, right, or near the deadline.
I believe it was at the deadline. I'm gonna
Yeah.
look it up again.
It's kind of weird to me that the Blue Jays wouldn't try to
Yeah,
re-sign him
so listen. Yeah,
because
listen to. He's
they
only
need
entering
pitching.
age 28 season.
Okay.
For when he got traded to Toronto in 6 starts, he had a 1.37 ERA, 26 in the third inning, 25 strikeouts. FIP was a little high; it's 4.14.
Yeah.
That's not great. WHIP a little higher too, 1.253. I mean, these are where the analytical numbers probably play into account. ERA of 1.37, but a FIP of 4.14. So that
Yeah.
could be a little weary of some guys, but I think he's still a guy you take a risk on a short, on a one-term deal. Give me a prove-it deal that you can do it for 30 starts a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then go from there because he can still get a good contract after next year. He'll be entering his age 29 season. So
Yeah. To me, I think that it makes too much sense for the Blue Jays to like not re-sign him, or it make
yeah, they're a
Blue
team that
Jays
could
should
definitely use
re-sign him.
pitching. They're a team that definitely use pitching. But again, this is a guy that teams like the Mets, the Yankees, other teams that need some back end starting pitching, I would take a look at and maybe
Yeah.
see if you can get a 1 year deal on him.
Yeah, and the Yankees were rumored to be in the market for him at the trade deadline, so I'm sure this is a guy. He could definitely find his way in New York, whether it's the Yankees, whether it's the Mets. Um, Yet to be seen. I mean, what like before we get to the bullpen, like I talked a lot about the Yankees in this position. Like, what do you think? What's the Mets' plan here? Like, obviously Trevor Bauer is rumored to be the number one get for the Mets. I don't think
I
he
think
I don't think he goes there personally. I think I've said that before on the pod, but like, what do you see happening at the starting pitching position?
well, I mean, a guy like Bowers is a must
Mm-hmm.
for the Mets. I think he has to be pushed hard for.
Yeah,
If they don't decide to go his route, then obviously a guy like Morton is the guy they would have to look at. And I personally wouldn't mind taking a flyer on a guy like Jake Odorizzi and just see what he can do. I think he could be a very serviceable 4 or 5 starter because
yeah,
I know we're not getting Syndergaard back until midseason, and even then, I don't know how he's going to be. But they have no pitching depth. I know I've said this so many different times, and I've seen so many different Met fans and other analysts thinking that Seth Lugo is your number 5 starter. No, he's not. And I say this with the utmost respect for Seth Lugo because I love him. He is a reliever, and he's the best reliever on that team and one of the best relievers in the
mm-hmm.
league. The numbers support that. He should not be starting. You're only hurting him if you start him. So he shouldn't even be an option in terms of your starting pitching depth. So they really do need to get 1 or 2 of these. They decide to go lower tier guys. I think if they don't get Bauer, then I think a guy like Morton and Ozorizzi, those 2 guys could be very good signings, and I would not hate those 2. Clearly, Bauer is number 1, but if they were to get Morton Ozorizzi or Morton and Minor or something like that, and I would be okay with that. I would,
Yeah.
assuming that they also touch up the other needs they have, center field, catcher, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be okay with a signing like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense. Even well, it's tough because like you guys really do need a catcher. Because like in my head, I'm like, well, maybe you get Bauer and or Morton, and you still get 1 or 2 more starting pitchers on top of it. Because you can never have enough depth. I mean, like you guys have seen, injuries are going to be a problem most likely. I mean, they're a problem
Oh
for
yeah.
every team in starting pitching, especially the Mets. Just to be fair, but.
It's the
Like
truth.
I don't know, you still
I can't get offended when it's the truth.
yeah, but you still have Syndergaard. Yeah, hopefully he comes back mid-season, but I don't know. Do you count on Stroman staying healthy for a full season? Probably not. Like Jacob deGrom, look, he's amazing, but he finds ways
I
to
don't
miss
think you
starts
can.
too. So like,
You have to be prepared that even the guys you think are going to go full year can go down at a moment's notice. You just don't
yeah,
know what's
that's
going to
why I'm
happen.
saying you have
Yeah,
to have 7.
knock on wood, DeGrom could get hurt. Knock on wood that he doesn't, but you have to be prepared that you may have to fulfill his spot. So that's why you got to have starting pitching depth. It's a shame that fucking Brody Van Wagenen traded away all of our young pitchers. They didn't have Justin Dunn anymore. They got rid of Simeon Woods Richardson. They got rid of a couple other pitching prospects that could have been useful over the last year or so. So now you have to rebuild that depth and hope that I think they have like 2 good starting pitching prospects that we could see next year, but you still have to sign 1 or 2 of these guys, these veteran guys, to shore up a rotation like that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go to the bullpen. Let's wrap it up here. With the bullpen. Big names: Brad Hand, Kirby Yates, Liam Hendricks. They're going to cost a lot of money, like you said. I think. I think honestly, we've talked about this with the Born in '87 guys. Like, we could make a legitimate argument that like you should just get Real Muto and shirt up the bullpen and like make the starting pitching like of the underrated guys. But let's just go through some of these names on your list. Who do you want to start with?
Well, the first name that I immediately came in that kind of hit me, that's literally a perfect spot for both teams, was Justin Wilson. Was with the Mets, had very good year or two with the Mets. Was previously a Yankee. I think this was at the start of his career, so he hadn't really established himself yet as that go-to lefty. Clearly, the one-out lefties don't exist anymore because of the 3-batter minimum. But he's a guy that both teams could absolutely use. I was thinking back, and outside of Chapman and Britton, the Yankees don't have a good lefty reliever. They haven't really had one. Like, I can't really tell the last time before Britton and Chapman were in play. The last time they had a really good lefty come out of the bullpen. I guess Andrew Miller would come to mind. This was still when there was the 1-batter minimum, though. Wilson's a guy who can get lefties and righties out. And he's shown that over the last couple of years. He wasn't just a one-out guy.
Yeah,
I think he would be a great fit for both teams personally. And I don't know. I might even go to Spot Track since we've seen how they can skew the numbers a little bit. But I think he's a need in terms of both. He fits both teams well perfectly. And you might be able to get him on a 2-year deal for a fair amount of money. I think he's only entering his age 32, maybe 33 season as a reliever. That's pretty good. I mean, I don't know. Your opinions? I think Wilson's a great fit for both teams.
Yeah, I think Justin Wilson was a Yankee. That's how we got Chad Green and Luis Sessa. Because when we trade him to Detroit. Justin Wilson's a good fit for both teams. I mean, he's a reliable pitcher. I don't think the Yankees give a shit how many lefties they have because they have
nowadays
they have something in their analytics that tells them it doesn't matter. I'm sure, and I've just grown to accept it, especially now with the 3-batter minimum, like lefty specialist doesn't really matter. Justin Wilson's not a lefty specialist, so I don't want to take that away from him. But I agree. I think he's a good. He succeeded in New York. I mean, he was a good pitcher for the Yankees, and he was obviously a good pitcher for you guys more recently, which is important, right? Because if you're bringing in bullpen guys to a New York market, the pressure situations are already pressure filled. You don't need them to be scared of the bright lights of New York on top of it. So I think that's also important. But yeah, I mean, I'm on Spot Check just for shits and giggles. His market value is a little over $7 million. I feel like bullpen.
I think that's right on par.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to value bullpen guys, to be honest. Like, the top guy is Hendricks at 15.5. So
yeah, I mean, he's a closer. I mean, if that's
I know. So I look at
we're still using. So
yeah, if I look at Justin Wilson, then it's like half of Liam Hendricks' value, and I think that's probably accurate and fair.
I think it's fair.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair assessment. I think anything half of Hendricks, who is the top guy, seems very fair in terms of what his value should be. Going on, the next guy I had on that list that I think a lot of people might be overlooking in terms of how good he can be is Shane Green. He was very good for Atlanta at the second half he was good for Detroit. Didn't do great for Atlanta. But in 28 games in 2020, 2.6 ERA, 3.81 FIP, 1.12 WHIP, and he had ERA plus of 185. So I think he's actually a very good reliever to have. He'd be entering his age 32 season, maybe get him a 2 or 3 year deal. But again, this also could be, so many teams could just be looking at 1 year deals for these guys. It's really hard to gauge what so many front offices are thinking, but especially when it comes to relievers, you just don't know from 1 year to the next. That's been proven for so many of them. But I think he'd be a good fit for either team. He's not a top end guy. He's not a Hendricks. He's not a Hand. He's not a Yates, but he's a serviceable dude that you can rely on when the time comes. So I think he would be another good fit for either the Mets or the Yankees. Especially since a right-handed pitcher like him is a definite need for your bullpen.
I wanna just say the names you had written down, and I want to put you on the spot on some names that I think you left off that you shouldn't have. So you have Joakim Soria, agree. He's a good pitcher. Mark Melancon, same thing. I don't know how to say this guy's last name.
Keone Kelly.
Kelly? What? I've never even heard of him. So that's
he was on the Pirates.
That would explain.
Wasn't great in 2020. I'll give you some of his numbers. He was in 32 games in 2019. A 2.12 ERA in 29 innings. 205 ERA plus, 3.52 FIP, 1.01 WHIP. 2020, he was only in 3 games. I think he had a little bit of an injury year. A 4.5 ERA there. But he's also only going to be entering age 28. So I think he's a guy that you could probably take a flyer on if needed.
Got it.
So
that's fair.
That's where my head was at with him.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he was a Pirate definitely explains why I never heard of him. Brandon Workman, very familiar with his work as a Red Sox, and Yusmeiro Petit, I agree, is pretty underrated. So the guys you left off that I want to ask you about, who's the big one? You left Blake Trinan. You're not a believer?
I consider him a big name. That's why I didn't want to put him in there. I think that's fair. I think in my opinion, the big names that are available on the bullpen market, Liam Hendricks is number 1, Brad Hand number 2, Kirby Yates 3, Blake Trinan 4. And I guess if you had to go throw in a 5th, maybe a guy like Ken Giles would be your 5th. Everyone else after that is, I'm not going to say an afterthought, but they might be guys like, all right, we can't get any of these top dudes. Let's start looking at the second tier. And that's where my head was at when I was putting together some of those things. Trinan, again, would be great for either team. He's had success in Oakland. He did well in Los Angeles. I don't know what his market value would be. I can only imagine what Spot Track has him at.
8-9.
Yeah, 8-9 million. Yeah, I guess it's like you said, it's hard to gauge some relievers when it comes to their value, unless they're a closer. If they're these guys that you want to bring in, when you need to get that big out, guy like him is who probably comes to mind, and is 9 million where it should be. I personally, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I consider him one of those bigger names.
Yeah, it was just interesting because I didn't really think Justin Wilson was like an under the radar guy. So when I saw you didn't have Trinan, I was like, all right, where are we going here? You mentioned Ken.
I consider him under the radar because the whole concept of the no longer having the lefty specialists, the loogies, as we did call them. Unless you were a guy like a Brad Hand, or if we're looking at all around the league, Aroldis Chapman, or these big lefties that had been known to be closers or to get left and rights out. Justin Wilson wasn't a guy that came to mind. He was always
Yeah.
one out guy. But then he's proven since the new rules came in that he can get both lefties and righties out. So I don't consider him a top tier guy. He's second tier to a guy like Brad Hand. But
well, yeah,
again,
I mean,
he's a guy you could fill in and do wonders for your bullpen.
yeah, I mean, it's the conversation we have all the time when we say tiers, like how big you want your tiers to be, But that's fine. I don't want to argue about it. You mentioned Ken Giles. That was someone I was going to ask you about. I kind of don't want to talk about this guy, but I have to. You did not mention Roberto Osuna.
Yeah.
He currently, for whatever it's worth, before we dive in, currently does not have a market value on Spot Track. So I don't know if something's going on that I'm not aware of. So at the risk of sounding stupid, I'm going to ask you, what about Roberto Osuna?
I didn't even want to give an opinion on him, to be 100% honest with you.
That's fine. I have another one, so we could just dive into the other one then.
All right, cool.
Sergio Romo. He's old.
He was at one point. He is getting up there in age. I think he's going to be entering his age 38 season.
He's 38 now.
He can be – okay. I mean, in terms of whatever age he is going to be that year, I think that's what counts as his age. So I think he'd be entering his age 38 season.
Got it.
I mean, he's had a good career. His career numbers are very good in terms of, ERA, innings pitched.
Yeah.
He has a career ERA of 2.95, which is very good. He was, I'm not going to say dominant closer for the Giants in their World Series years, but he was the guy that they called upon, and he got the job done. But he's kind of bounced around a little bit since then, and it's really hard to gauge where he could be. But I'm not going to put age as a factor against him because I put Yusmeiro Petit on my list, who's also going to be entering, I think, his age 38 season. But, I mean, they've both put up very good numbers. I think Romo would be a good guy to, maybe try. I don't even know if he would be getting a 1-year deal. He might get like a minor league deal. I personally don't know.
Yeah.
He would probably be in my.
One thing I know is if he gets any sort of deal, he'll find his way into the major league bullpen.
He'll find his way into a role. Absolutely. I mean, he's done it since he left the Giants. He had the year in LA and split with the LA and Tampa. He was with Miami and then Minnesota the last 2 years. So he was a part of that, fairly good couple teams. I don't know how great their bullpen was outside of Trevor May and or Taylor May and Trevor Rogers, whatever it was.
Trevor May and Taylor Rogers.
Yeah, I thought it was right there. I think he would be a good signing. He's not a guy that jumped off the page to me when I looked at some of these guys and their numbers and everything like that. But I don't know if he's a good fit for either the Mets or the Yankees.
Well, I mean,
I think he'd be a good.
I would be very hesitant to have him on the Yankees because
like
we have enough trouble catching sliders from Adam Ottavino and Chapman.
Yeah,
so
I mean, if you woke up tomorrow and you said that the Yankees signed Sergio Romo to a 1-year deal or even a minor league deal, like what would your reaction be? Like,
I'd be happy.
There's so many others on board that you should have been looking at first, right? I mean,
yeah, but if it's like a minor league deal, it's probably pretty expendable. Like I'd be happy. I'd be concerned if it happened tomorrow and I found out it's a major league deal. Like that would not make me happy. But if it was a minor league deal, like, I wouldn't be mad. Like I don't know what you were expecting.
I mean, I'm looking at it. I would look at it like how you have like a fantasy draft, and you know how you can put your guys in your queue about when your guy comes up and you want to get drafted, they could just take him out of your queue. If they already get drafted, they get pulled out already. That's kind of like how I'm seeing. You have all these guys, you have them in a list of what do you think best to worst, and Romo is probably down there towards like right outside of the top 10. So he's not a guy I'm looking at first. I'm looking at those second tier guys like I put. Would I hate a Romo signing if all of my previous my previous wants are gone? Yeah. No, probably not, because it does help the bullpen in some way, shape, or form. He's not the closer, clearly, but he's definitely a guy that you can bring in when you got to keep a game close or something like that.
Yeah. He also, I mean, look, he's not going to be a Yankee because there's no way he shaves that beard, nor should he, So
Fair
doesn't matter.
point.
The last guy, and I really just think he deserves to be talked about for everything, because he's a pretty like low key vocal guy for like the Players Association with all like the negotiations that were going on, the COVID stuff, and that's Sean Doolittle that you left off.
I totally forgot that Doolittle was going to be a free agent. I honestly didn't even realize he was going to be a free agent. Yeah. I like Sean Doolittle personally. I think I like his character. I like his personality. I think he's a funny dude. Yeah. I mean, yeah, clearly he was on the Nats, so I hate him. But
he's just had a lot of good seasons in a row here.
He has. I mean, Oakland, he was great. Washington was great. Down year the last couple of years, which is a little upsetting. He had a full year in 2019. 4.5 ERA in 63 games, 60 innings.
I was confused.
Before that, he's been very formidable.
Yeah, I was confused because Spotrac does most recent up top, or Baseball Reference does it the other way. So yeah, the 5.87 ERA last year and the 4 the year before, but it's also like bullpen ERA. Like, what does that really mean? Like one bad outing could win that, but. I don't know. I mean, he's another guy. He won't be a Yankee because he shouldn't shave that beard. But I think he's definitely a guy who would definitely help a bullpen more than he would hurt a bullpen, for whatever it's worth. Spotrac doesn't.
Absolutely. I mean, those last 2 years really suck. 2019 really sucks for him. 2020, even the condensed year was not good. But his 2018 numbers, I mean, 1.6 ERA, 45 innings. A 160, 267 ERA plus, 267. That's just insane. His FIP was 1.89. He was a beast in 2018.
Yeah, but I think he got hurt in 2020 because I'm looking here and he only pitched 7 innings. So let's not.
It may be. Then he may have gotten hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, 11 games, 7 2/3 innings. Yeah. So yeah, he may have gotten hurt. Is he a guy I take a flyer on? Yeah, maybe, probably. I mean, he's proven in past years that he can pitch. Again, this is I just want to reiterate to our listeners that these are not guys we're saying that the Mets or the Yankees should be watching for right now. These are guys that if the type A player, if they're off the market or they decide to look elsewhere, these are guys that we're looking at. We're not saying like, oh, Doolittle's available over Hendricks, let's sign him. We're not saying that. We're saying if guys like Hendricks and them are off the board, or if they're not, if our teams are not in the market for them, these are guys that they can look for. I just wanted to reiterate that because I don't want anyone thinking like you guys are crazy for thinking these guys are for this. So I just want to reiterate that. I mean, if they want to, but that's not what we're thinking. But is Doolittle a guy I think a team should take a flyer on? Yes, absolutely. I didn't even realize that he was a free agent. I just hope that he can recover from those 2 down years, or at least the down 2019, and get back to. I'm not expecting him to ever put up a 1.8 ERA for the year ever again. I think I'd be solid with anything under. I mean, if he could keep it under 3, awesome. If he could keep it under 3.5, great. I think you could probably get away with it in like the 3 to 3.5 ERA. That frame.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when it comes to bullpen, all I care about is like I'd rather look at their game log, and I want to look at like how many games did you come in that you let up a run, because that's really what because you can't judge like it's a small sample size. The ERA is what it is. I'd rather know like how many times you come in and do your job, and maybe that's correlated to ERA, but it also you
also can't even correlate that with a lot of bullpen guys. If they come in with men left on base, you got to remember that whoever is on base and they score, they get charged the previous pitcher. So like that bullpen arm.
I think you could filter Baseball Reference for that. So that's why I looked there.
Can you? Okay, good.
Yeah,
because like that's one thing that always annoyed me. Like I come in, bases loaded, I give a hit that scores 2. But lucky for me, those 2 runs don't count towards my ERA. So I'd understand why some pitchers are like, that's bullshit that I have to get charged. I mean, yeah, those guys are on base because of me, but I didn't let them in. So I guess in certain instances, some relievers' numbers can be skewed. But if you're able to filter them out, and of course, they have different analytical stats now that probably show better versions of it. If you can filter them out, that's best. You can definitely see stuff like that.
All right, so we'll end there. This was I think this was longer than we thought. I think we got really in depth, which was good. And
we spent like 30 minutes talking about Jake Odorizzi, so
yeah. Fuck that guy.
You can cut that out a little bit if you want.
No, I'm not going to cut it. But yeah, so I mean, hopefully, like I said in the beginning, hopefully now we spoke into existence that moves are going to happen in baseball because, I'm a big NBA guy, Pat, and like free agency is alive and well in the NBA, like right away.
I had two things about free agent signings while we were on. So
I got one. So
I got two.
That's weird. But yeah, so we're going to wrap it up there. Appreciate you putting this episode together, Pat, and see you soon.
Thanks, buddy.